How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be checking out a video by the channel called Build the Lanes, and it's called There's More to Dutch Roads Than You Think, which I'm sure there is. There's more to a lot of stuff than you think, right? But anyways, this is a priority request by someone called The Real Dutch Idiot. So shout out to The Real Dutch Idiot. That's his name, so I'm not just saying that. Legit. So anyways, right here, Build the Lanes channel, and I'm going to go ahead and hit like on it. And yeah, there's more to Dutch roads than you think. So we're going to find out what more there is.
On the 1st of August 2023, the city of Toronto publicly announced the creation of a Dutch-styled intersection in its downtown. The announcement, along with a pretty nifty video, was met with delight from local advocacy groups. But what does Dutch-styled mean exactly? Why do images of safety upgrades make people think immediately of the Netherlands? And why are so many engineers and planners so eager to brand their latest design as Dutch? The Netherlands, although being small, has a massive reputation for creating excellent and safe transportation systems. Its city centers look like this. The most popular vehicle is this.
Hold on.
Its city centers look like this. The most popular
I want a bike like that. It looks so cool. It really does.
Vehicle is this, and its traffic death rate for the last 50 years has done this. But as the irritated Belgian might point out, the Netherlands isn't the only golden boy in the lobby. Denmark's capital of Copenhagen is world famous for cycling, and Danes have plenty to be proud about. German cities like Freiburg and Leipzig have tram and cycling networks that could hold their own against most Dutch cities.
Okay.
In fact, it might surprise you to learn that the Netherlands isn't even the best performer in Europe when it comes to traffic safety. Ranked by traffic deaths per million of inhabitants, a European Commission report in 2022 found that the Netherlands only came in 9th place out of the 27 member states of the EU.
Okay.
But before you get too disappointed and start unsubscribing from Dutch urbanist channels, wait just a minute. Because while the land of windmills and cheese isn't the only nation in Europe with safe bike lanes, they are absolute champions when it comes to building them everywhere. If you've been fortunate enough to visit Europe multiple times, you might notice a pattern. A popular and often touristic city center with lots of pretty buildings and museums inside of a pedestrianized zone, with easy access to public transit and a safe environment for cycling. But once you exit the downtown, that safe and enjoyable environment gives way to much more auto-oriented infrastructure. Or if you travel to multiple cities in a country, the quality of transportation can vary drastically from city to city. Sure, Leipzig in Germany is quite good for cycling, but good luck if you go to Bochum or Hagen. Breaking this pattern is where the Netherlands really stands out. It doesn't matter if you're in Amsterdam, Utrecht, Groningen, Maastricht, The Hague, or Leiden. They all have the same safe infrastructure in both the downtowns and the outer suburbs. Nor do you have to stick to the large cities. We can see the same safe systems in the small towns and villages scattered across the country.
Yeah, and I guess they have bike paths and stuff that actually connect most of the Netherlands together, like just really good bike paths and stuff. I know they're talking about more about the roads than the cycle paths, but still.
And along the rural routes, linking it all together. This doesn't mean everything is perfect, but the general rule is that you must look a lot harder to find the bad than the good. So, why is the Netherlands so good at making its infrastructure uniform? It's not as simple as pointing to a single piece of legislation or telling the story of how a few forward-thinking engineers and planners managed to inspire an entire country with their vision. It'll take analyzing 5 fundamental components that exist independently, but when they come together, it creates a transportation system second to none.
Was that the Transformers or something? Cartoon from the 80s? I don't know. The Traffic Law, Part 1.
The year is 1994. The Channel Tunnel opens. Finland votes to join the EU, and in a small corner of Europe, the Dutch Parliament approves the Wegenverkeerswet, the road and traffic law. Complementary to a new traffic code passed in 1990, these reforms were an attempt to shake things up a little bit in the nation's fight against traffic deaths. By 1985, the country had managed to cut fatalities by 56% from an all-time high in 1972.
Well, 1972, that was the height of the whole traffic situation that led to the country being more bike centric, I believe. I did a reaction actually um, about that. I don't remember the name of the actual video that I did, but it's pretty interesting. You could probably find it on my channel. I know you can find it on my channel. You just got to look for it.
But in the following 5 years, progress slowed to a trickle with a reduction of just 4%. It was becoming clear that something new was needed, a fresh approach where only a complete rethinking of traffic regulations would do.
Okay.
The previous strategy based on the traffic law of 1966 could really be summarized as preventing crashes by making them illegal. The
What? Making crashes illegal?
default response of the traffic authorities to problems would be to amend the traffic law, so it would no longer be legally possible for problematic situations to arise. Maybe introduce a new road category, add a new regulation sign, or just add to the list of things that were prohibited.
They were like trying to drive up on the sidewalk.
The regulators were in the driver's seat, and the engineers were playing catch up by just implementing the newest signage or adjusting road designs to meet the latest regulations. The result was a convoluted mess of dozens of road categories that was starting to do more to confuse people than to boost safety. But the traffic reforms of 1990 and 94 changed all that by cutting regulations so aggressively that it could make a libertarian blush. The overwhelming number of legally defined road categories were downsized to just three: the Erftoegangsweg, the Gebieds- und Sluitingsweg, and the Stroomweg. The reduction and simplification process was so thorough that the legal text regulating traffic in the Netherlands can be held in this small book here. But the reforms didn't only remove rules, it also added new concepts and precedents.
So removing rules made it safer? I'm confused.
A crucial one being that the design and appearance of road infrastructure must stimulate the desired traffic behavior. This shifted the primary responsibility for traffic behavior from the regulators to the road designers. For instance, if a city wants a residential street to be calm, the traffic law defines 30-kilometer-an-hour regulatory signs that can be enforced by the police and basic rules of the road. Other aspects like getting the majority to comply with the new speed limit, how to create safe behaviors at intersections, and the locations of traffic markings was going to have to be figured out by the road designers in charge of the project. Or, as another example, want to create a cycle street where cars behave like guests behind the cyclist. Well, sorry, bucko, there's no legal text or regulatory sign defined in the traffic law that can stop Dutch drivers from overtaking cyclists if they want to.
Interesting. So, but they can't just, cars can't ride on the cycle paths though, right? Hmm.
So you'd better come up with a way to design the street to shoo away as much car traffic as you can and encourage cars to only pass in a safe manner. This new dynamic, where the government kept itself to basic traffic rules and leaving designing to the designers, changed the paradigm and revolutionized everything. Now, if you're listening from abroad and have experience with getting stonewalled by arbitrary traffic regulations, the thought of being unshackled from codebooks to chase after your most ambitious designs probably sounds pretty great, right? But transitioning to a system overnight, where you inherit most of the responsibility for driver behavior and be without the blanket support from traffic signs, is not a challenge that anyone should take lightly, or alone for that matter.
I mean, it's hard to change anything overnight, anyways. It's better. A lot of times, everything's like a gradual thing, but
Dutch road designers needed to start acting less like bureaucrats relying on arbitrary rules and more like scientists using data to achieve desired outcomes. To help with this transition, two organizations would step forward.
the Suave and Crow. What is a Suave? Suave? How do you pronounce that?
The SWOV, or the Wetenschappelijk Onderzoek Verkeersveiligheid, is the primary institute for research for road safety in the Netherlands.
Okay.
They publish general statistics like how many road deaths and injuries occur every year in the Netherlands.
Is the number rising? Thought it was going down.
To analyzing which types of travel surfaces are the most dangerous, or comparing the benefits of different kinds of intersection design. Think of the SWOV like the eyes and ears of the Dutch road system.
Wait a minute.
Think of the
What are they circling here? So do they have like cameras and monitors up everywhere?
SWOV like the eyes and ears.
Okay, so there's boxes around those vehicles and cars that are measuring their speed. Very interesting.
Ears of the Dutch road system. As an independent group, their data helps paint a clear and unbiased picture of the challenges facing the transportation system. It is these insights that point designers in the correct direction to then concentrate their efforts.
Also, forgot to say, links to the original video is in the description section down below, along with the link to support the channel. Hit like, hit subscribe while you're down there. That'd be amazing.
But if the SWOV is the eyes and ears, then the second organization, the CROV, is the brain. Like the SWOV, the CROV is also an independent group, but its mission is to provide empirically proven design recommendations for engineers and planners across the country.
Okay.
For instance, when research found that collisions with bollards was a leading cause for hospitalizations of cyclists, the CROV got to work by doing a series of field tests to figure out the safest bollard setups.
Why is it called the CROV when it's like CROW? I don't understand that.
Collisions with bollards was a leading cause for hospitalizations of cyclists, the CROV got to work by doing a series of field tests to figure out the safest bollard setups while still being able to stop cars. Everything like the distance between bollards, illumination at night, bollard height, and the length of guidance marking was tested. The results were then bundled into a design guidance for road designers titled Evaluatie aanbevelingen voor palen op fietspaden, or an evaluation for the recommendations of bollards on bike paths.
We don't have bollards here that I know of. I don't know. We have posts like at like drive-through places or banks or anything that has a drive-up window. I guess they're called bollards. We call them like posts or pillars or whatever, but they're usually painted like a bright yellowish orange, and it's just there to keep people from hitting the building like around the corners and stuff when you go, when you go to turn the vehicle. But we don't have them in like roads and stuff like that here.
This publication is available here and can be accessed by anyone with a membership to the CROV's technical library. Of course, bollards are just one small example. The same kind of resources exist for every aspect of the road system, like roundabouts, programming smart signals, or footpaths for pedestrians. And the CROV's work doesn't end once the guidance is published. They need to be updated regularly, so they often collaborate with local governments to discover unexpected issues and get feedback on their designs from those who implemented them. With the joint efforts of the SWOV and the CROV, Dutch road designers enjoy access to the most cutting-edge research and designs in the world, while retaining freedom to design what they want.
I don't know why, but I thought the car and the bike was going to hit each other. That's why I jumped. The responsibility of safety.
The concept of retaining freedom to design what they want can pivot us to the next component of the Dutch system. Many might assume that there is a strict code defining what is and isn't legal to build on public roads in the Netherlands, but this would be incorrect. In fact, none of the design guidances in the country are legally mandatory, and on top of that, the Netherlands has no licensing system for professional engineers, chartered engineers, or any other kind of designation that gives exclusive rights to approve engineering plans. Theoretically, anybody can propose any type of design that they want. I know this might come as a surprise, but don't just take my word for it. Even the CROV admits in their own texts that their design standards have no legal or mandatory status. A road authority could theoretically ignore them just as quickly as it took to read them. And after all, just because something is better doesn't mean everyone will use it. Just ask my native country, the United States, about the metric system. How does this contradiction exist in a place where everything seems to be so similar everywhere? I mean, how else could such uniformity in design across an entire country be possible if it's only voluntary?
But if it works, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be legal. It's just like they just know that the recommendation's good, so they do it and they see that it works and it's a thing.
Surely something must be happening to explain why all these roads are so similar. Well, indeed, there is the legal concept of the responsibility of safety. Just how an airline has a legal responsibility for the safety of its passengers, or a food company has a responsibility for safety of people eating their product, traffic reforms also introduced this concept to public roads.
Makes sense.
Now, the Dutch Highway Authority, the Rijkswaterstaat, would be responsible for the safety of all drivers using its highways.
Where's that at? I thought they didn't have very many skyscrapers over there. Well, maybe The Hague or not The Hague, like Rotterdam or something.
Or a city like Utrecht became responsible for the safety of cyclists using this bike path. However, this doesn't mean that a drunk driver who gets in a crash on a Dutch freeway can just turn around and hold the Rijkswaterstaat legally liable. Road authorities can only be held liable for crashes that are reasonably within their power to prevent. But it does hold them to account on two things: maintenance and design. For example, if a Dutch road is riddled with potholes which ends up causing an accident, the road authority absolutely could be held liable. Fixing potholes and keeping the road in good condition are reasonable things within a road authority's power to do.
Makes complete sense.
Another case would be if a cyclist gets injured using a dangerous crossing, when there are alternative designs proven to be safer. Since the road authority is the owner and has the power to approve the design of the facilities it operates, it also falls within their reasonable power to only approve the safest designs to protect its users. So,
Hope everybody pays attention there. It just seems like it's just all over the place.
what's a road authority manager looking to avoid bankruptcy from legal settlements to do? Invest like hell in proper maintenance and follow the design guidelines that have been empirically proven to be the safest option possible.
Also, they're not sue happy over there. Like everybody over here is just gonna you get sued for anything in the United States. There's ads for lawyers all the time, and they encourage people to sue. It seems like it's not so much like that in Europe, so it's a little bit safer for people from that aspect of it.
So, while using the CROV isn't legally mandatory, there is one hell of an incentive. This incentive is a nifty tool, but it also has a useful companion that can block stubborn designers from causing lasting damage.
Dutch environmental laws.
Now, the Netherlands certainly isn't the only country with environmental legislation,
Right.
but they do go a step further by mandating environmental targets for roads. Like noise pollution, any new or reconstructed road inside city limits needs to try to achieve 48 decibels, around the same loudness as a conversation in your home. So just
Really? How do you do that though? I wonder.
to give you guys an idea, this is my voice at a normal conversation level, and this is the loudness of the road when cars are driving on it. As you guys can see and hear, it's pretty much around the same, around the 43 decibel
How exactly would you regulate that though? I wonder. Is there like certain materials you can use on the road that makes it less noisy or something?
marker. Or like air pollution. Roads can generate all kinds of toxic pollutants like PM10, particulate matter with a diameter up to 10 micrometers,
Okay.
small enough to enter your lungs and heart, where they can cause serious health issues. Dutch law sets a strict limit for the annual average at 40 micrograms per cubic meter. So, if a road authority wants to rebuild or widen a road, they must prove that it will comply with these limits or risk having the project blocked.
Oh.
An easy way to see this mechanism at work is by looking at the Dutch freeway system, or the Rijkswegen, on Google Maps. Notice how the freeways skirt around cities instead of blasting through the center,
Yeah.
LA style. It's a great example of how freeways are supposed to be used, expediting trips from city to city, and not being relevant for trips inside a metro area.
Yeah, that makes sense because here you got just freeways going right dead center through the middle of cities and stuff. It's crazy.
Because the environmental law allows freeways to reach up to 65 decibels in loudness, but only allows 48 decibels inside of city limits, this more or less forces road engineers to follow the Ser Aerove advice to not build freeways straight through cities.
Okay.
And we can see the same principle inside the cities also. Most Dutch roads are only one lane in each direction, sometimes two as we approach city limits, but never more than two. It turns out that one more lane to fix traffic, bro, is much harder to do when the widened road can only be as loud as people talking in a room.
And then you got places here like Chicago that have like 6-lane highways and it's just so loud.
There's no way 6-lane stroads can meet this requirement. Just listen to how loud this 5-lane stroad in North America is.
And that's with not much traffic.
So, because environmental legislation makes road widenings a non starter, it forces local leadership to seek out alternatives that actually work, like more efficient signals, better bus connections, or more cycling.
Holder politic.
The final component for discussion isn't technical like the previous ones,
And I'm sure I butchered that, so apologies to the Dutchies.
but rather cultural. It's the piece of the puzzle that isn't about how to do it, but more about the why. Why was there so much motivation to reform in the first place? Why was there so much invested in research and design knowledge when it didn't happen in other nations?
Very interesting. I know it's off topic, but how they're putting the bricks in there, very interesting.
And why bother with such a complex systems of incentives instead of a blunt force mandatory approach? To understand this, we need to touch on the Dutch tradition of polderpolitiek. To understand polderpolitiek is to understand the geography of the Netherlands and the history of the Dutch relationship with it. As most of you probably know, a large chunk of the Netherlands landmass is under sea level elevation. There's little to worry about today about catastrophic flooding, but hundreds of years ago, the fortress that the Dutch built to protect themselves didn't exist. Most of the land was wet, marshy, and very flood prone.
Yeah.
So the towns were developed in dry areas that were called polders.
It's not a dry area called polders. They make the polders.
A polder is an area of land that's surrounded on all sides by raised embankments for protection from flooding, akin to an empty cereal bowl placed in a sink. If major flooding happened during the storm, the surrounding countryside would flood, but the small island of civilization inside would stay dry.
Yeah.
The obvious downside of this setup is its fragility. All it took for a polder to fail was a single poorly built or poorly maintained section for floodwaters to punch through and turn the dry island into one giant swimming pool.
Yeah, and that's why the windmills are so prevalent there because the windmills would be used to pump the water out of the polders to keep it dry.
Coexisting with this fragile reality would end up shaping politics in a rather particular way. In order to survive and keep their feet dry, these polders learned that they had to govern themselves in a way that allowed political participation across all classes and professions when it came to anything related to managing water. This is because polders that were run more like dictatorships ended up being much more likely to flood. After all, dictators often make decisions from their own singular assumptions and can't easily be criticized or shown the shortcoming of their decisions. When everyone has a shared interest for survival, it ended up being a far better system to let everyone's voices be heard.
Well, yeah, and it just makes more sense, right? But a lot of kings and dictatorships back in the day probably didn't care about the people. They just live their life and make their rules according to their own agenda and everything. But when it's like something like the water situation, it affects even the king and stuff also. So they're kind of forced to just listen to the people.
This long-standing tradition is how the Dutch concept of polderpolitiek was born, and it continues to be relevant to this day. Nowadays, polderpolitiek is emphasized even more in Dutch public spaces. It's the same commitment to reach a consensus that motivates the Dutch to come up with solutions that are good enough to satisfy everyone. Solutions that can make the streets safe, crush congestion on roads, preserve a healthy environment, and do it in a way that's affordable for the government. It was this commitment that led to the rise of each component we discussed, and then coming together to produce a system that continues to inspire people around the world every day.
Very nice. Well, that's that, guys. If you got any comments, drop them down below. Shout out to the let's see here. The Real Dutch Idiot. That's the name of the guy that or it could be a girl that suggested this video. And if you guys want to make your own priority request, like I said, there is a link in the description section down below. Drop a comment. That's free. Hit like. That's free. Have a super fun, awesome day, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.